We all want to achieve the waste diversion, recycling, the green jobs. However, we all know here's the reality. We as a department, unfortunately, we're the one who has to carry out the mission, right? We've been talking about recycling for a long time. It certainly is not lack of effort by the city government itself or the nonprofit, but until those individual citizens change the actual habit of actually paying attention to what they can recycle, what they can't recycle, we won't achieve what we wanted to achieve.
I'm Terry Thompson from Cherry Hill, and we know that great leadership can lead to some great things. And sadly, we didn't see eye to eye with our former DPW director, Rudy Chow. And we want to know, will you commit to hiring a DPW director who's in support of the zero waste plan and will prioritize its implementation? And will you ensure that the new director either has zero waste certification or will be required to obtain it?
Absolutely. The answer is yes. And I think that you all know that I actually didn't vote for Director Child when he was reappointed, and I voted against his raise. So again, and this time I'm going to work on all the agency heads, right? Everyone will have to reapply, but also what I'm going to be doing different is that I'm going to have people from all walks of life that the agencies are going to interact with to help me weed out to get the best of the best. And you guys will definitely be a part of that process. So absolutely, they're going to have to understand and commit to zero waste and zero waste policies and practices in order to, because well, listen, I'm not a mayor for what we had. I'm trying to be a mayor for the future. And the future is looking at things through that lens.
So, the answer is yes and yes. And even if the director doesn't have the certification for zero waste, there are other directors within the Department of Public Works that should have that requirement and be certified, particularly the team that works under the solid waste department, because that is the piece that drives it. My solid waste person who's now in Washington, D.C., Val Nkumo, would have been, y'all would have exceeded by now if she was still there. And I don't know if any of y'all know her. She was a phenomenal individual that not only understood the process and systems, but would have worked 24/7 to take steps in the right direction.
The short answer to what you just said is yes. My worry is that person might be hired before the next mayor takes office. And I very much like to have a voice in that decision. We need to find someone who has actual experience outcome. And I think that would be a key requirement for me, that it's not just words, but someone who's actually done it in another setting. As I said, I grew up in a city that had, a zero waste goal, used pay as you throw as a way to change behavior. I want to actually digress for a moment on that one, which is I worry in Baltimore about how we can implement something like pay as you throw in a city with a high poverty rate, because we need to do it in a way that we're not burdening people unfairly. I do like the example of a pilot that I believe is being tried in Cherry Hill, where we actually give rewards to communities that reduce waste. And so I want to think about the sort of financial model for suppressing waste and rewarding different behavior in Baltimore. I think there's an opportunity there to think about how we could do that working closely with communities.
Excellent question. Yeah, I mean, I will be the first to say happily that Rudy Chow is gone, that I didn't like his leadership from the get-go, and I'm glad that it's not there anymore. I absolutely want to make sure that we hire people who have an intersectional and just focus on building up a better city. If you're not aligned with me in creating a just city, which means committing to zero waste, which means committing to affordable housing, and to treating those who have been struggling most through decades of institutional racism and intergenerational poverty, and that you're not willing to put the city's resources into alleviating that, I don't want you in my administration. So that means anyone in DPW who has aligned with Rudy and wants to maintain that type of status quo, I don't want them there. Might mean we need to have a new director of solid waste as well. Any assistance and what have you. Like it's more of a believe in zero waste, believe in economic justice, believe in environmental justice, or get out type situation for me. Because we've had enough of the folks who have maintained the status quo.
Absolutely. And I shared that before as well. I'm getting goosebumps because I can talk openly with you all because it's nothing that I have to look at a script. And I've actually said that. I said that at a forum that we had before to make sure they have the certification. And I got some individuals that weren't pleased with my answer of saying that we need to make sure we hire a DPW director from Baltimore. I believe you can take the talent in Baltimore and develop that individual. So they may not come to the table with 100% of all the certifications and the qualifications, but can we develop that individual? I would definitely make sure they have the certifications. I would definitely make sure they're on board and committed. But the other part about that is I take it back to my business background. You know, again, when I sit at the table with everyone, you know, I'm gonna give you a perfect example if I can briefly. My brand that I'm an operator of KFC. But if you put me in a kitchen, I will burn every single piece of chicken there is. So one thing as a business owner, as a CEO, what I do is bring everyone to the table, asking the question, doing the vetting. So before I hire individuals, I make sure that I surround myself at a round table where you have experts such as yourselves that could, challenge, vet, make sure that we're all on the same page. Because in order, again, that I mentioned earlier, in order to repair and rebuild Baltimore, you have to have all hands on deck. Everyone has to have a seat at the table to make sure that we're all in this together, make sure that we all have a commitment and understanding up front, versus now you've hired someone into that role. We find out 6 months later, it happens to me in business, unfortunately, sometimes, but we find out 6 months later down the road that, hey, that was probably not the best hire that we could have made. So I believe that the next CEO, the next mayor has to have that mindset and that approach that is willing to bring everyone to the table and let's do this together. Let's collectively interview this individual. Let's, sign off on it. In my company, we do first, second, and third interviews. And a lot of people say that's too many interviews. Well, at the end of the day, when you're bringing someone in that family, you want to make sure you understand where they're coming from, where they're going, what they're going to bring, what might hinder them or hurt your organization. So it has to be everyone to the table, making sure that we're in this process together.